I hope and think that my presidency will be regarded as positive and successful by future generations. We won the world's respect in the War of 1812. We stopped exploitation by the Barbary pirates in the Second Barbary War. We set up a workable national bank that would not endanger the Constitution while still allowing finances to run smoothly. And we prevented the federal government from overextending itself and doing more than it was meant to do in the nation. I think that ultimately, my presidency adds up to a positive. I think it was very successful, and I hope that future and current Americans agree with me. My greatest achievement during my presidency, I would have to say it was the Second Barbary War.
The War of 1812 was sparked on the high seas. Shortly after Madison's inauguration, the British began seizing American ships and impressing U.S. sailors and merchant seamen. Diplomatic efforts to solve the crisis went nowhere. Finally, on June 18, 1812, James Madison became the first president in U.S. history to ask Congress for a declaration of war.
British impressment of our sailors in capturing and plundering of our American ships, along with British supplying of armaments to Americans on the American western frontier, all contributed to my decision to declare war on Great Britain. On a more general basis, Great Britain's complete disrespect for America was the primary underlying reason for our declaration of war.
We proved to the world, we earned the world's respect. We proved that we would not take abuse lying down, that we would fight, and that we would win to protect and defend ourselves.
Britain was clearly not going to stop abusing us, and if we were going to just lay down and take it, we may as well have never revolted and established our own nation in the first place. As such, the war had to happen at some point. Was this declaration of war about public opinion or your own view on the issue? Alright, I believe in the principle of majority rule embodied by the Constitution, and the majority of the American people at the time wanted the war. As a public elected official, I had a responsibility to go with what they told me. I had a responsibility to fulfill their expectations and win back our nation's honor by going into this war.
My personal beliefs don't really matter as an elected official. I am representing the nation. Majority rule is what our nation is based on. That is democracy. So, when the majority, the vast majority of the nation, wants to go to war with Britain, believes that Britain does not respect it, and believes that it needs to prove itself to the world, I have no choice but to acquiesce to that. The vast majority of Americans in 1812 wanted to go to war with Britain. They wanted to prove themselves. I could not deny them that. You're right. Going into my presidency, I hope to maintain friendly relations with all nations. Unfortunately, as I'm sure my predecessors will tell you, our intent going into the presidency can't always be carried out. I never anticipated the degree to which Great Britain would abuse and disrespect our nation. When I saw just how far they were willing to go, I knew that I had to act, and as such, I went back on my hopes for neutrality, and I pushed for war. I was a principal writer of the Constitution. I know what was intended by myself and the other framers. And that Constitution never grants the federal government the power to create and operate a national bank. As such, when I had the opportunity to let this bank die, I did so. I feared that leaving it alive would set a dangerous precedent that could endanger the meaning and interpretation of the Constitution for all future generations of Americans, and ruin all that myself and others fought so very hard for. Yes, I did change my mind in regards to the National Bank in 1814. I had good reason to, though. Fighting the War of 1812 without a national bank was incredibly difficult. Financing was nearly impossible. When I realized this, I accepted that the bank might be necessary. Also, at the time, I believed that the threat to the Constitution had faded. There was less open interpretations of the Constitution at that period in time, and I believed that by allowing the bank to go through then, it would not create such a dangerous precedent for the future, it would not undermine the fabric of the Constitution, and that overall it would be a workable decision, one that would benefit the nation more than it would harm it. To be honest, I did enjoy the end of my presidency more than I did the first 6 or so years. After the war ended, the big issues of the day were not quite so important. The American people were united, they felt respected by the world, and that was reflected in our political climate. As such, I had a much smoother ride in the last 2 years of my presidency, and I greatly enjoyed it in comparison to the beginning. I greatly preferred it to the beginning.